I retrieved my trail cam from the woods. I should delete the photos I captured. Predators are an uncommon sight where I like to go hunting near the Rocky Mountains. I wanted to see what exactly I'd be contending with during the hunting season, so I decided I would place some bait fairly deep in the woods. Whatever would take the bait would be photo captured on my trail cam. I drove to a heavily wooded stretch of a logging road and parked my truck on the side of the road. The fresh air was great to breathe in, and even from the road you could hear the chirps of birds and insects. This area was new to me, recommended by a family friend. He claimed I'd see lots of bears here. I kept the bait, a few pounds of meat slabs, sealed up in a bag while I trekked into the woods with the bait barrel. I hiked in about 15 minutes from the road and reached a small clearing that I was satisfied with. I scanned the ground for any flattened grass, animal tracks in the dirt, and any sort of droppings nearby. I found some tracks that looked like a wolf had gone through here fairly recently. No matter. My gun and pepper spray were with me as well. I set up the bait rather quickly and fastened my trail cam to a tree. The camera itself was well hidden thanks to how the branches hung on the tree. I would get a clear view of whatever went for the barrel. My expectations was to find a bear with this barrel of meaty bait, but I'd be satisfied in capturing photos of other animals like mountain lions, wolves, even a wolverine that could probably all smell the meat and come to investigate. My trail cam picked up something much worse. Just about a month later, I went back to retrieve the trail cam. After parking the truck, I had already begun finding some discrepancies from my hike there last time. There was an eerie silence that carried through the woods. No chirping, nothing. I could hear every step I took, almost louder than before. Some people find the complete silence to be tranquil, but I'm not one of them. I felt more alert this trek. The alertness made the path to the trail cam feel that much longer. The silence persisted as I finally saw my equipment in view. The barrel had tipped over and was scratched up. The stench of something like a carcass smacked me in the face. I got the gun ready, sure that I had to shoot something. No rustling in the bushes, so I proceeded carefully. The bait was still there. Of course, it had begun to spoil. This is where the foul smell was coming from. Oddly enough, there were spindly hairs that were stuck to the bait. I plucked one off of the bait. It had to have been almost a meter long, fully unraveled. What kind of hair was this? Disappointed, and still a little bit on edge, I hastily grabbed my trail cam and left everything else behind. I could hear something trudging through the trees in the distance, so I kept the gun at the ready as I left. It was somewhat persistent, as I could hear the sounds of grass being pressed down, shrubs rustled, and twigs and branches being stepped on for most of my way back. All the noises were far, but persistent. I felt watched. I picked up my pace and eventually got to the truck. The minute that I slammed the truck door, I heard a strange yell in the distance. My heart skipped several beats, and I started up the truck despite the feeling of my blood nearly freezing. I stepped on the gas and made my way back home. I had about an hour's drive back to my home, and my thoughts raced on the eerie feeling. The fact the bait wasn't taken, the strange hair, and that god-awful sound. Hopefully it would all be solved with the photos and the trail cam. At record speed, I darted into my condo and got the trail cam's photos loaded onto my computer. There were lots of photos that were taken, so I started from the top. A part of me wishes that I didn't. The first batch of photos were primarily just photos of the bait, no animals or anything. Strong winds, swaying trees, things like that probably tripped the camera. These photos persisted for a few days. About a week or so in, there were photos of birds landing on the barrel and other small critters that I could see through the trees. There was even a nice buck in the area that walked through the clearing. It wasn't until the third week that I finally saw what I was looking for. A bear. Big one, too. It looked like it sniffed the barrel, but then the photos picked up something that confused me. The bear took off swiftly. I could see photos of the dirt and leaves being kicked up. There were a few incidents of this event. A bear would investigate the barrel, notice something out of the camera's range, then run off. I started to get an explanation from the photos about 2 days after the first, when I saw something I'm still puzzled by. In one of the photos, wrapped around a tree, looked like a human hand that wasn't there before. I reviewed the cluster of photos taken at one of the later moments. The bear sniffs the barrel, and the thing's hand hits the tree, and the bear takes off. The bear didn't even stand its ground. A few days of photos were uneventful, until 4 days before I picked up the trail cam. I was both confused and terrified by what I saw on the camera. From out of the clearing, I saw what I can only describe as a hairy, naked man crawling on all fours towards the barrel at 4 a.m. The hair on his head was almost the entire length of his body. The thing was emaciated and moved abnormally slowly, judging by the photo. I almost leapt from the computer chair upon looking at it. There's no explanation for something like that to be in the woods at that time. It reached the barrel and began scratching it up. The swipes it took at the barrel were cat-like and swift. I took notice that when this thing stood up, it was at least 7 feet tall. It knocked it over and began frantically pulling all the meat bait out of the barrel. It held it in its hands and threw it on the ground. It cocked its head towards the camera, as I could see the shine in its eyes reflecting. This thing looked back at the meat and began rolling on top of the meat with its mangy body. It stood back up and unhinged its jaws to let out what I can describe as a scream. My mind paired that scream that I had heard upon leaving with these photos, and I nearly lost consciousness. I wanted to stop looking at the photos and turn it in to the authorities, but what would they say anyways? I still had 40 photos to go. I took a few hyperventilating breaths and pushed onwards. It attacked the barrel some more, and its attention then shifted to the trail cam. I think it may have noticed it, because it began to stumble towards it. After taking several irregular steps, it peered down towards the camera. I could see its warped face coming in from the top left angle of the photo. Its eyes were abnormally spaced apart, closer to that of a goat's, but not fully on the side of its head. Its long hairs swayed in what I assume was either its abnormal movements or the wind. Eventually, after investigating the camera, it crouched back onto all fours and scurried into the trees directly away from the camera. There were a few photos remaining of mundane activities much like before this horrific encounter. Nothing touched the bait, and it was pretty clear why. If I knew that thing was out there, I would never have gone to get my trail cam back. I'm certainly never going back there, ever. I want to delete these photos, but a part of me thinks it's worth putting a case together for the sheriff or something. It was a close call. Who knows what would have happened if I had gone 4 days earlier to grab the camera. I probably wouldn't be here and able to be writing this. This was originally posted by Throwaway the CJ on R No Sleep. The link is in the description.